My next book is Tarot for the Hard Work. It's got a long subtitle. An Archetypical Journey to Confront Racism and Inspire Collective Healing by Maria Minnis. As some of you who know me personally know, I've gotten really interested in tarot traditions. Now, I know for people who I grew up with, people who are kind of more maybe Christian or even especially conservative Christians, in terms of how I was brought up, when I heard the word tarot, it was like, that's evil, that's satanic, it's demonic, it's playing with spirits.
Could it be Satan?
None of that is true. Let me just say, like, I don't use it to predict the future. I think that's stupid. I don't use it to kind of divine what's going to happen in world events. For me, and I think for most contemporary people who do the tarot, it's more of a spiritual exercise for self-reflection, for kind of looking into yourself and saying, kind of like, what's going on inside of me, and how can these really interesting symbolic images in these cards help me think about things like wisdom, things like love, things like achieving kind of inner equilibrium and peace and whatnot. And basically in this book, Maria Minnis takes the tarot tradition, particularly what's called the major arcana, which are these 22 cards in the tarot that have really, really strong symbolic meaning. Cards like death, right, which obviously represents death and all the symbolic meanings that go with death. It's probably one of the most famous cards from that. The Fool, right, is another card which represents beginnings. And she basically takes these cards, gives an interesting spin on their traditional interpretations, and applies them to kind of like social justice work. I didn't realize this book was like a workbook. I'm not really a workbook person, so I'm kind of skipping over the workbook parts. But still, it's really interesting hearing kind of her perspective, especially as like a black woman, on this tradition, which historically kind of descends from medieval Europe and has mostly been kind of like Anglo tradition for a long time. So I think it's really cool when people discover other cultures' traditions and kind of like find these new and different nuances and meanings in them. So this has been a really good read as well.